You're watching Community Conversations, a Concord TV production.
Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Concord TV Executive Director Josh Hardy, and we like to bring on guests for this program to get the latest on what's happening in Concord with the arts and with the local economy and with the latest of what's happening. And I think the arts has been a big hot button topic given everything that's happening during the pandemic. And that's why I'm glad that we have Ellen, who's the president of the Community Players of Concord, New Hampshire. Ellen, thanks for calling in. I'm sorry that we can't do this in the studio right now.
Well, I'm comfortable at my home, and you look like you have a pretty good setup, so I think we're good.
Yeah, this works for what we are, the hand we've been dealt with. We've been adapting. So under normal circumstances, the COVID pandemic aside, could you tell us a little bit more about the Community Players of Concord, New Hampshire in a nutshell?
Absolutely. There's a lot to tell because we've been around since 1927 here in Concord, and we are a community theater group that was founded with a mission to help encourage amateurs to engage in all aspects of the theatrical arts. So for decades, we have been producing shows here in Concord, primarily at the Concord City Auditorium, which has been our performance home since 1927. And nowadays, pandemic aside, we would normally be doing 4 shows at the Concord City Auditorium, a children's show in October, and then 3 other shows, November, February, and May. And in addition to that, we have a children's program that does that fall show I mentioned, but they also offer children's theater camps, a week in the summer, a week in February. Those are very popular. And in addition, something people not part of the theater world of New Hampshire, something they wouldn't know, is that the Community Players runs an extensive lending program. We have a vast collection of costumes, props, set pieces, which we keep and use in our studio building in East Concord, and we lend those costumes, props, set pieces to other groups in the area, schools, civic groups, other theater companies, and really all over the state. Over the years we've lent to more than 155 groups. So in any given year, if you go to a show at Concord High School or RB Productions or Bow High School or you name it, you will probably be looking at some of our costumes on stage, furniture pieces. It's a very robust lending program that's run entirely by our volunteers. We are an all-volunteer organization. So we have a lot of people who are busy year-round, pandemic aside, making all of this activity happen. It's a real beehive of activity normally.
Yeah, the building that you mentioned in East Concord, where you keep a lot of the set pieces and costumes, I went there a couple years ago and was just amazed. I had no idea how much you had. I had no idea about the lending program. So that's a good point for our audience to, when they go see a show at some point, that they'll see your set pieces, they'll see your costumes that are contributing to other non-community player shows. And that is what a community-based organization is all about right there. So that's amazing. So you kind of touched upon this a couple times, but the pandemic obviously has been so difficult for all of our local theater groups, for theater groups across the country. We know Broadway has been deeply impacted. So can you just tell us kind of some specific examples of how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the community players?
Oh yes, it was devastating to our season. So in February we had just had our children's theater camp, and at the time we had a large set for our spring production under construction that was going to be Barefoot in the Park, and hundreds and hundreds of volunteer hours had gone into the set, and then all of a sudden, as we all know, March 15th or so, bam, shut down, and our studio shut down, and all of our operations shut down. And so that Barefoot in the Park set is still standing in the studio. it's ready to go. It was within a couple of weeks of being moved over to the city auditorium. Our cast was ready. They had a couple of weeks left of rehearsals. I mean, it was just, everything just stood still all of a sudden. And so that show got postponed. It's presently scheduled for end of April, May 1, but that seems highly doubtful at this point. We'll probably have to push it forward again. But after that, you know, we were supposed to have a children's theater camp in the summer. We were supposed to put on Neil Simon's The Dinner Party at the Hatbox Theater at the Steeplegate Mall. That had to be canceled. And then our November show and our February show, which would have been a couple of weeks from now, were all canceled. So it was very difficult, and our board really had to spring into action immediately because shows are our primary revenue stream. And because we have a building, we have insurance needs, we have a lot of ongoing expenses that don't stop just because shows cannot be performed. We had to face the question, like every other theater-related group, how are we going to pay the bills when we suddenly have very little income from our normal streams? Now, we do have fundraising that we do every year, and we get, you know, various and sundry donations, but I would say ticket sales account for more than 85% of our income. So we really had to step it up hard in the fundraising area. And I'm really happy to report, Josh, that while we all wondered in March, wow, are people going to be giving to charity at this time, where people are being laid off and businesses are in question? I'm happy to report that the community has really risen to the occasion. We were very successful in our fundraising. In the first round that happened in the spring, it wasn't quite enough to get us through to fall 2021, but then we did a second round of fundraising to a different group of people, mostly, in just before Christmas, and that round was also extremely successful. So people really showed that they value the arts, that they value what the community theater, what community theater is and does for this community. And we've just been really, really humbled and happy that people have donated, so that we feel now that we can pay our bills through 2021. And in fact, we, for the first time in anyone's memory, we applied for some grants, and we were given a 3-year operating grant from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, which is going to enable us now in 2021 to spend money dipping our toes back into producing shows. Because when this first happened, we thought, well, we can't spend any money beyond absolute necessities, because we needed to be sure we could pay the heat and the snow plowing and all of those things. And now we're in a position where we can do that, and we have some money that we can endeavor to put on shows. And if we don't make our money back, well, then that's just money that we will have spent on our mission. So we really feel like, even though we're all still in the pandemic, we feel that we've done everything we could do to ensure the survival of the organization, and also to position ourselves to start now moving back into theater programming, which is very expensive. Theater is very expensive to produce. People don't always realize what it costs to put on that show that you're seeing at the Concord City Auditorium, but it's a lot. And so we're excited for 2021, but we will be wading into the waters. We won't be jumping into the deep end right away.
That's the sense I get from everyone is sort of, we're not going to wake up one day and everything is just back to normal. It's sort of this gradual process that we have to go through together. But so do you find, like with the ticket revenues, I mean, typically, maybe it depends show to show, but that's a consistent revenue basis, right? Compared to fundraising, where we can have fundraising goals, because we do that too at Concord TV, but it seems a little riskier. I mean, is that sort of the way you guys look at it? Is at least ticket revenues year to year, it's generally a consistent revenue stream, or?
Well, it's a funny thing. No, really not. Each show has a budget, and we know from year to year that some shows are likely to be wildly popular. So, for example, if our children's program does Frozen Junior 2, we know that a lot of people are going to want to come see that. 125 children will audition for 40 slots. We know that's a popular show. It's a very expensive show, too. But we have a good idea that that will sell. But getting away from those sort of blockbustery kind of shows, like we did Spam-A-Lot a few years ago, just incredibly popular. But most other shows, you don't have that guarantee at all. And so you can see trends. But then, for example, you might do a show in February, and you think this is going to be a really popular show. People nowadays are less inclined to commit themselves in advance. We all know this, right? You're having a party at home, and it's like, gee, why aren't people RSVPing? It's sort of in our culture. And then what happens if you have a snowstorm that weekend? And people have said, yeah, I've been talking to my friends. We're thinking about going to the play on Friday. And then a big blizzard moves in on Thursday. So that can be really devastating to an organization that really needs to sell the tickets in order to cover the costs of the programming, and then to have a little left over so that you can do the next show. So it's not certain by any means. No.
It sounds like community theater was prepared to be adaptive anyways. It sounds like this pandemic was unprecedented, but sounds like you guys have been dealing with the ebbs and flows and adversity with every show and the differences between them. So
that's right. Although our organization has been around so long and doing it so long that we definitely have patterns. It's a very set system in terms of when shows are planned, when you have to get your licensing contracts in place. It's a very, very lockstep sort of process, and at least in terms of getting ready to offer the season. And so it really was challenging. And this goes for any theater group, Majestic, Palace, Peacock. All of a sudden, you didn't have that. You couldn't plan. You couldn't put down money and really begin making preparations for a show that was going to happen in 6 months or 8 months from now, because we soon began to realize we had no idea. So pivot is an important word nowadays with businesses and theater groups too. And I do have to hand it to our volunteers. They really stepped up and immediately realized that we cannot do things the way we've always done them. It's not going to work. We absolutely must have a new flexibility that we're unaccustomed to, frankly. So I'm pretty proud of the way the group has come together. And everybody's pitching in. As I've only been president since the summer, and it's just been wonderful how I can get anything done. I just have to call someone and say, Josh, would you blah blah blah? Sure, yep, got it. It's really been heartening the way people have come together to pivot.
Yep, such a great organization to be able to come together and pivot like that. And in a similar sense, I'm going to pivot this conversation to asking you about, while there hasn't been live programming, I understand there's been some other projects that have been undertaken. Could you just tell our audience a little bit about some of those, improvements that have been made?
Yes. So we made attempts to do some online stuff in the fall, not too much. But we found that there was not a great enthusiasm. For example, we wanted to do a children's camp in the fall. And what we've quickly found, both anecdotally and in the surveys that we got back from the families, was that the children were screened out. They had had enough. The parents, the families, they had just had enough, even by the fall, of their children being in front of screens and children being in front of screens. So we realized we really needed to step back, do some other projects which have been very worthwhile for us behind the scenes. But now here we are in 2021. we kind of have accomplished a lot in terms of fundraising and fixing up our studio and just dealing with some things that had been on the back burner for a long time. And so now we're prepared and have a bunch of things in the pipeline. And I wrote a couple of them down. Let me just give you a sampling. So, for example, tomorrow we have a virtual murder mystery social, which is, it's intended to bring our members together. We have hundreds of people who've been members over the years, and this is a murder mystery game, Broadway themed murder mystery. We got the package from a company that sells this. And so we'll have about 20, 25 people online tomorrow. They will have been assigned their characters ahead of time because everyone is playing a character. And someone is the murderer, but of course only the murderer knows who he or she is. And it's this whole game that will go on for a couple of hours, and just for laughs, a little bit of acting.
Sounds like fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll do more of those. We'll do more of those as the year goes on. Valentine's Day weekend, we have a benefit concert that Seraphim Affleck is going to record for us. She's a well-known soloist in the area, and the Bank of New Hampshire Stage has graciously allowed us that space. So Seraphim is going to be recording a concert of show tunes focused on love and relationships and friendships, and that will be aired on YouTube. So we have a little team working on that. This is interesting, Playwriting Workshop Festival. So in the fall, Brian Halpern up in Laconia ran an online playwriting workshop, and many of our members participated, and the workshop resulted in, I think, 14 plays. And so now we are working with Brian and his wife Johanna. They call themselves Powerhouse Theater Collective. We're working with them to put on a festival of plays. So in April, there will be a Zoom festival of these short plays. And then there's going to be a second session of the rest of the plays, which will be done in Rotary Park in Laconia. So it'll be an outdoor play festival. So once Brian and Johanna had that framework set up, we invited anyone who was interested in trying to be a director to sign up. So we've got a lot of novice or beginner directors that are going to direct each of the individual plays. And right now, auditions are being accepted, video auditions are being accepted because all of those plays need actors. And the players will, of course, assist with that, the play preparation, but we also, of course, will provide costumes, set pieces, and publicity. And so video auditions are being accepted now. So if anybody wants, all levels of experience are being invited. So even beginners who'd like to give acting a try can submit an audition video and hopefully be cast in one of those plays.
Where would they submit the video to?
Well, if they go to our website, communityplayersofconcord.org, I'll say that again, communityplayersofconcord.org, there is a link on there to the play festival. No, pardon me. There's a link on there to our latest newsletter, which has a link to all of the materials that you need to know how to audition, the materials to prepare for the audition, or people can contact me directly at ellen.berger@communityplayersofconcord.org. And I'll be happy to help anybody out who's interested in that. And then in the works, this is really exciting for some of us, we have a couple of people who are working with Kevin Gardner, who is a longtime professional actor, playwright, director, teacher of theater. He's well known in the area. He was at St. Paul's. Anyway, he's kind of the area guru, and he is working with us to prepare an online director's workshop. So if someone is an aspiring director and would like to, I think it's going to be a 4-session online course. Not sure when, I think early spring. That's in the works, and you should stay tuned to our website for more information on that. There probably will be a fee, but it will be very modest. So that's kind of fun.
So you guys have all kinds of things happening and ways to keep busy in 2021.
Yes. let me mention one other
Sure.
one other way people can join us to keep busy. So we have that studio building that we discussed. It's in East Concord, and it's a 21-year-old building now, and it had become pretty frayed, well worn. And so this pause in the action has given us an opportunity to use materials that we have in-house, to spend a little bit of money, and it's being transformed room by room by room. New flooring, new paint, cleaning out, reorganizing, building new shelves and things. There's plenty of work to be done up there. Sorting costumes, tagging costumes. And so if anyone would be interested in joining our volunteers, which is a socially distanced situation in this giant building, again, they can contact me at ellen.berger@communityplayersofconcord.org. We'd love to have more volunteers.
Fantastic. That sounds great. Now, something you had kind of mentioned, I think before, was how difficult it is to plan things out when you're trying to plan for shows, and you're often looking months ahead, which during the pandemic is very difficult. We're kind of all treating it day by day. So what are your thoughts and at least initial plans for the rest of 2021 and for the light at the end of the tunnel, which is being able to do shows again at some point?
Right. Well, I mentioned that Barefoot in the Park set is still in the studio. And this is a set, it's hard for people to imagine if you've not done theater, but this set is 2 stories tall. It takes up, a giant room. It's multi-levels. So our hope is that the next show that we do at the auditorium will be that show, because so much has gone into that set. We are not taking it apart or paying to store it somewhere. So once the auditorium is open, without the COVID restrictions, the capacity limits, the extraordinary cleaning costs, once it's back to normal operations, our hope is that show will go into the city auditorium. We would love to do a small production, possibly elsewhere. Difficulty is we have Hatbox Theater, which is temporarily on pause also right now. We don't have a small affordable venue that we can just pop a black box show into, Hatbox Theater being the exception. So with everything on hold, we're not sure what we could do by way of smaller productions that require less costs, less of a set. We could prepare another show in our rehearsal room, which is it's a large room, but it's not a 2-story warehouse space. We could prepare another show as long as it had a very simple set, not a large cast. So we're keeping our ears and eyes and thoughts open to how we might manage to do that if as we fear, it could be well into the fall of 2021 before we can get back into the city auditorium to do things the normal way. So we're just remaining flexible and trying to be creative and open and think of new ways to do things on relatively short notice, because we don't have a year to plan.
Right. Well, there's no easy answers, but clearly you guys have been thinking about it and are able to pivot if you absolutely have to. And just another reason for you to come back on the show is when there's updates and things going on. But certainly, like you mentioned, folks can go to communityplayersofconcord.org. I assume also you have the e-newsletter. People can sign up to get those emails as well, right?
Yes.
So I would highly recommend, I think I'm on that mailing list as well, where people can get updates, because as soon as anything develops and changes, I'm sure that's one of the first ways you get that out, right?
Absolutely. That comes out once a month, and then, maybe 2 weeks later, we might send out an alert of if there's something new. But with respect to that, one nice thing about that newsletter is it contains some of the beautiful pictures of the studio rehab that's happening. And for the 1,000 people who've used that space over the years, they will be delighted to see the changes that are happening. One other thing I want to mention, Josh, because I didn't get to it before, is that we are presently hoping to do a children's theater camp this summer, even though we don't expect that it will be indoors. If I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could all be indoors and safely together? And if that's so, then we would use our rehearsal room. But our plan at this point is to do a children's theater camp with outdoor rehearsals, maybe with some online, and then an outdoor performance, probably in August. So that would be a 1 week summer camp in August. And I urge any parents and youth who are interested in keeping up to date with that, get on the newsletter, watch our website, because we hope we're going to have something to announce pretty soon.
Awesome. There's something for families to look forward to, especially not in front of a screen, right? That's the big thing.
That's
Is
it.
in person, in front of a screen. The jury's still out for us about our video camps this summer. So same thing with Concord TV summer programming is we'll find out what, if not tomorrow, the day after, if not the day after, the day after that. That's the
Right.
way we're treating it. So,
That's right.
so under normal circumstances or even during the pandemic, how would people get involved with the community players? Because as you mentioned, it's an all volunteer organization. uh, I'm sure you can always use more hands just to make the light work, the shared work with everyone. So how would people, maybe some examples of how they could volunteer and how they go about doing that?
Sure. So if they go to our website, there is a Get Involved tab. And there you'll find contact information and descriptions of various things that happen. They can contact me, Ellen.Berger at communityplayersofconcord.org, and I'm happy to chat about it. But we have so many different functions in the organization. And if people go and look at the list of committees that we have, that will give you an idea of how much there is to do. Because backstage, we have people who sew, sort, distribute costumes. We have a whole giant props area in our basement. All of those need to be sorted, cleaned. You have to meet people to do the lending program. Then we have people who build sets, whole teams of people that build, people who paint sets. Over at the auditorium, when we move in, we have people who have to serve as house manager for the auditorium, of course, ushers, but lights, sound, backstage, it's a vast, vast network. With respect to administration, we have photographers who work with us to help us with publicity. We have, the whole board. I mean, anyone who's been on a nonprofit board knows there's a lot of work that goes to the admin side. So we cannot get enough of interested volunteers. There's a place for everybody and all skill levels. And we welcome inquiries. We welcome people to join us. Even now and during the pandemic, there's plenty to do. But once we get going, there's too much to do, frankly. So
A lot to do in it, but it sounds like if someone wanted to learn about theater tech, this would be a good opportunity for them to get hands-on experience and to volunteer their time, but also to learn something out of it too. So so a lot of benefit to that volunteerism. Well, this has been a really great discussion, Ellen. So thank you for taking the time to be on this virtual edition of Community Conversations. So folks can go to communityplayersofconcord.org, sign up for the e-newsletter to get updates on what's happening with the Community Players of Concord, New Hampshire. Any other last thoughts, Ellen, before we wrap this up?
no, thanks, Josh. This has been a really nice chat, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to tell people about an organization that they're not seeing right now because we're all in our homes. But we hope that people will look us up, see our shows, but better yet, join us.
Absolutely. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you again, Ellen, for being on the show. This has been Community Conversations. We'll see you next time. Bye.